There is a question I hear almost every single day in my clinic. A woman sits across from me, sometimes in tears, sometimes just exhausted, and she says, "Doctor, I've done everything right. I've cut the carbs. I've walked every morning. I've eaten salads until I can't stand the sight of lettuce anymore. And this belly, it just keeps growing. What is wrong with me?" And every time I hear that question, something tightens in my chest, because I know what she's feeling. I know the shame she carries. I know the silent conversations she's had with herself in front of the mirror, pinching, pulling, wondering when her body became someone else's. I know the way she avoids photographs now, the way she scrolls through old pictures and mourns a version of herself that seems to have vanished overnight. And I also know something she doesn't, something that changes everything once she hears it. Nothing is wrong with her. Her body isn't broken. Her willpower isn't weak. Her discipline isn't failing. What's happening to her is one of the most misunderstood biological events in modern medicine, and it has almost nothing to do with how much she eats or how far she walks. This is not a failure of character. This is a failure of information. And by the end of what I'm about to share with you, you will understand your body in a way that most women are never given the chance to. Let me explain. When a woman enters perimenopause, and later full menopause, her body undergoes a hormonal shift so profound that it changes the way every single cell processes energy. Estrogen, a hormone most people associate only with reproduction, is actually one of the most powerful metabolic regulators in the human body. For decades, quietly, invisibly, estrogen has been doing something extraordinary inside you. It's been directing where your body stores fat. It's been governing how your muscles use glucose. It's been keeping your cells sensitive to insulin. It's been orchestrating communication between your brain, your gut, your liver, and your adipose tissue. It's been protecting your heart, shielding your bones, regulating your mood, modulating inflammation, all of it silently for 30 or 40 years. And now, as estrogen declines, sometimes gradually over years, sometimes in sudden dramatic drops that leave you dizzy with symptoms you don't recognize, all of those beautifully coordinated systems begin to recalibrate. They don't break. They shift. And the first visible sign of that shift? Fat begins migrating. It moves away from the hips and thighs, where estrogen used to direct it like a traffic controller, and it settles around the abdomen, not just under the skin where you can pinch it, deep inside, around the liver, around the intestines, wrapping around organs like a slow, invisible invasion. This is visceral fat, and it behaves nothing like the fat you've known before. Visceral fat is metabolically active. Think of it as a living organ in itself. It produces inflammatory molecules called cytokines. It disrupts insulin signaling at the cellular level. It interferes with cortisol regulation. It increases cardiovascular risk, heart disease, stroke, metabolic syndrome. It even communicates with your brain in ways that affect mood, energy, and cognitive function. And here's the part that frustrates so many women. The part that brings them to tears in my office. It does not respond to conventional dieting. You can cut your calories to 1,200 a day. You can eliminate sugar completely. You can run on a treadmill for an hour every morning, and this fat will not move. Because it's not being driven by calories, it's being driven by hormones. I need you to hear that again. It's not being driven by calories, it's being driven by hormones. I've had patients who came to me after years of failed diets. Women who had seen nutritionists, personal trainers, even other endocrinologists who simply told them to eat less and exercise more. One woman in particular I'll never forget. She was 53. She had been athletic her entire life. She ran half marathons in her 40s. She ate clean. She meditated. She was the woman in her friend group everyone envied for her discipline. And then, over the span of about 18 months, she gained nearly 30 pounds, almost all of it around her midsection. She went from wearing size 8 jeans to not being able to button a size 14. She told me she felt like she was living in someone else's body. She said, "I don't recognize myself anymore. I look in the mirror and I see a stranger." When I ran her labs, the picture became devastatingly clear. Her fasting insulin was elevated, not diabetic, but heading in that direction with alarming momentum. Her hemoglobin A1C was creeping upward. Her cortisol pattern was disrupted. Instead of peaking in the morning and declining gently throughout the day, as it should, her cortisol was spiking at night, which was destroying her sleep, which was further driving insulin resistance, which was feeding the belly fat, which was increasing systemic inflammation, which was disrupting her cortisol even more, a vicious cycle, a hormonal loop that no amount of salad, no number of miles on the treadmill, no calorie tracking app was going to break. And that's the piece most women are never told. Menopause belly fat isn't a single problem with a single solution. It's a cascade. It's a system-wide recalibration that involves at least 4 interconnected pathways, and unless you address the system as a whole, you'll keep fighting the symptoms and losing every single time. Let me walk you through what's actually happening inside your body, because understanding this changes everything. The first pathway is estrogen decline itself. As I mentioned, estrogen doesn't just regulate reproduction. It regulates fat distribution, insulin sensitivity, lipid metabolism, and even the composition of your gut microbiome. The trillions of bacteria in your intestines that influence everything from digestion to mood to immune function. Research published in the Journal of Clinical Endocrinology and Metabolism has shown that the drop in estradiol during menopause directly increases visceral adiposity, independent of diet or activity level. Let me say that more clearly. Even women who don't change a single thing about their lifestyle, who eat exactly the same and exercise exactly the same, can gain significant abdominal fat purely because of the hormonal shift. This is not a character flaw. It's not a lack of willpower. It's endocrinology, and it's been documented extensively. The second pathway is insulin resistance, and this is where things get really critical. As estrogen falls, your cells become progressively less responsive to insulin. Think of insulin as a key and your cells as locks. In your 30s and early 40s, the keys worked smoothly. Every time insulin knocked, the cells opened up, absorbed glucose, burned it for energy. But as estrogen declines, those locks start rusting. The keys don't fit as well. Your pancreas responds by producing more insulin, more keys, trying desperately to get those cells to open. And insulin at high levels is one of the most powerful fat storage signals in the human body. It literally tells your adipose cells, hold on to everything, don't release anything, store more, especially around the belly. So even if you're eating a so-called healthy diet, if it's structured in a way that keeps triggering insulin spikes throughout the day, frequent small meals, hidden sugars and condiments and dressings, refined carbohydrates disguised as whole grains, even certain fruits consumed in excess on an empty stomach, you're essentially sending a constant signal to your body to keep storing fat. Not because you're eating too much, but because you're eating in a pattern that feeds the hormonal dysfunction. The third pathway is cortisol, and this one is deeply, painfully connected to the emotional experience of menopause. Cortisol is your primary stress hormone. It exists to save your life in emergencies. But during menopause, the hypothalamic pituitary adrenal axis, the master system that controls your stress response, becomes profoundly dysregulated. Hot flashes disrupt sleep. Night sweats jolt you awake at 3 a.m, drenched and panicked. Sleep disruption elevates cortisol. Elevated cortisol increases cravings, particularly for sugar, refined carbs, and salty comfort foods. Those cravings spike insulin. Insulin drives fat storage. Fat storage increases inflammation. Inflammation further disrupts cortisol. And the cycle spins faster and faster. Study after study, including longitudinal research from the Study of Women's Health Across the Nation, one of the most comprehensive studies ever conducted on menopause, has confirmed that women with higher cortisol levels during the menopausal transition accumulate significantly more visceral fat than women with lower cortisol. This means that managing stress isn't a luxury. It isn't something nice to do if you have time. It's a metabolic intervention. It's medicine. The fourth pathway, and this is one that almost nobody talks about even in medical circles, is the loss of muscle mass. After the age of 35, women begin losing muscle, slowly at first, almost imperceptibly. But after 40, the rate accelerates, and by the time menopause arrives, this process, called sarcopenia, is in full swing. And muscle is not just about looking toned or being strong enough to carry groceries. Muscle is your body's largest metabolic organ. It's your primary glucose sink, the tissue that absorbs the most blood sugar. It's where your cells burn the most energy at rest. It's what keeps your resting metabolism alive and functional. When muscle mass declines, your basal metabolic rate drops. You burn fewer calories sitting, sleeping, breathing. And the energy that would have been consumed by active muscle tissue gets redirected into fat storage, specifically around the abdomen. This is why women who were slim their entire lives suddenly develop a belly in their 50s. It's not because they started eating more, it's because they lost the metabolic engine that was burning everything off. So when I look at a woman sitting across from me who has tried every diet and failed, I don't see someone who lacks discipline. I see someone whose body is caught in a perfect hormonal storm, estrogen plummeting, insulin climbing, cortisol surging through the night, muscle quietly disappearing, and she's been handed a teaspoon to bail out a sinking ship. Of course the diets didn't work. They were never designed for this. The question is not, how do I eat less? The question is, how do I recalibrate this entire system? And the answer, the real answer, the one I've seen work hundreds of times across decades of clinical practice, involves a completely different approach than anything you've probably been told. First, the way you eat needs to change, but not in the way you think. It's not about eating less. It's about eating strategically. It's about understanding that food isn't just fuel. It's a hormonal signal. Every meal you eat sends a message to your endocrine system. Research from the American Journal of Clinical Nutrition has demonstrated that meal timing and macronutrient composition can have a more significant impact on insulin levels than total caloric intake. When you eat matters. How you combine proteins, fats, and carbohydrates matters. What you consume first in a meal, this seemingly trivial detail, directly influences your postprandial insulin response. For example, a study published in Diabetes Care found that eating protein and vegetables before carbohydrates in the same meal can reduce glucose spikes by up to 40%. That's not a fad diet. That's not a restriction. That's biochemistry. And when you apply this principle consistently, your insulin begins to normalize. And when insulin normalizes, the signal to store belly fat begins to quiet. Second, movement must be completely reframed. The model of exercise most women carry in their minds, walk more, do cardio, burn calories, is dangerously incomplete for this stage of life. Cardio alone, especially steady-state cardio like brisk walking or jogging, is simply not enough to combat the metabolic changes of menopause. What the research overwhelmingly, consistently supports is resistance training. Lifting weights, challenging your muscles, building lean tissue. A landmark study published in Menopause, the official journal of the North American Menopause Society, found that women who engaged in progressive resistance training during menopause not only preserved their existing muscle mass, but actually reduced visceral fat by a significant margin. Even without changing their diet at all, the muscle itself becomes a metabolic engine. It burns glucose around the clock. It dramatically improves insulin sensitivity. It alters the hormonal equation in your favor. And beyond metabolism, strength training strengthens bones, improves mood, reduces anxiety, and restores a sense of physical confidence that many women feel they've lost. Third, and I cannot overstate the importance of this, sleep and stress management must be elevated to metabolic priorities, not afterthoughts, not wellness accessories. Priorities equal to nutrition and exercise. When cortisol is chronically elevated, when your nervous system is stuck in a state of constant low-grade alarm, nothing else functions properly. The best diet in the world won't overcome a cortisol problem. The most perfectly designed workout won't build muscle if your body is in survival mode. because survival mode means breaking down muscle and storing fat. That's what cortisol does. It prepares you for famine. Practices that downregulate the sympathetic nervous system. Intentional deep breathing, structured sleep hygiene, morning light exposure to reset circadian rhythm, even brief mindfulness practices. These are not luxury spa concepts. They are endocrine interventions. They directly lower cortisol, improve insulin sensitivity, enhance sleep quality, and create the internal environment in which fat loss becomes possible again. If you've been fighting this battle alone, if you've been trying everything and watching nothing change, or worse, watching the belly grow despite your best efforts, I want you to know something. I've spent years refining an approach specifically for women navigating this transition, bringing together the strategies that I've seen produce real, lasting change. I've made it available through the first link in the description. Take a moment and explore it. It might be the missing piece you've been searching for, the thing that finally helps everything click into place. There's something else I need you to understand. Something that took me years of practice and thousands of patient conversations to fully appreciate. The emotional weight of this experience is not separate from the physical changes. They are deeply biologically connected. The frustration you feel when you step on the scale, the shame you carry when your clothes don't fit, the grief for the body you used to have, the anger at a medical system that told you to just diet. These emotions are not weakness. They are not overreaction. And they are certainly not irrelevant to your physical health. Chronic emotional stress, the kind that lives in your body every day, humming beneath the surface, elevates inflammatory markers. It disrupts gut microbiome diversity. It impairs thyroid function. It weakens immune surveillance. It accelerates aging at the cellular level. When a woman feels defeated by her own body, that defeat is not just psychological, it is physiological. It is happening in her cells. And that is why the first step toward real, lasting change is not a new meal plan or a gym membership. It's understanding. It's the moment a woman stops blaming herself and starts seeing her body as an intelligent system that needs recalibration, not punishment. Because once you understand the mechanism, you stop wasting precious energy on strategies that were never designed for your biology. You stop running on a treadmill at 6 a.m. wondering why the belly won't shrink. You stop starving yourself through the afternoon and then collapsing into a binge at night because your cortisol crashed and your blood sugar plummeted. You stop comparing yourself to the version of you that existed at 35 because that version of you was operating under a completely different biochemical reality. And comparison to that reality isn't motivation, it's self-harm. I've watched this transformation happen hundreds of times, and it never stops moving me. A woman walks into my office broken, exhausted, carrying shame she didn't earn and blame she doesn't deserve. And when I explain to her what's actually happening, when I show her the lab results, when I draw the hormonal pathways on a whiteboard, when I connect the dots between her disrupted sleep and her elevated insulin and her afternoon cravings and her growing belly, something shifts. You can see it in her face, in her shoulders, in the way she sits up a little straighter, relief, understanding, and then determination. Not the frantic, desperate, white-knuckled determination of another crash diet, a calm, clear, grounded determination, the kind that comes from finally knowing what you're dealing with, from finally having a map when you've been wandering lost. One of my patients, a 58-year-old retired teacher, a grandmother of 3, told me something I'll carry with me for the rest of my career. After 3 months of following a protocol designed around her specific hormonal reality, not a generic diet, not a punishing exercise routine, but a targeted, personalized approach addressing her insulin patterns, her cortisol rhythm, her muscle preservation, and her sleep architecture, she had lost 14 pounds, mostly from her midsection. Her fasting insulin had dropped to normal. Her sleep had improved dramatically. But that wasn't what she came to tell me that day. She sat down, looked me in the eyes, and said, "For the first time in 5 years, I feel like my body is working with me instead of against me. I feel like I'm home again. That's what's possible. Not through deprivation, not through suffering, not through another round of self-punishment disguised as discipline. Through understanding, through precision, through working with your biology instead of fighting it. And if you're ready to take that step, if you truly want to understand how to work with your body during this transition instead of against it, I've left something in the pinned comment that was created specifically for women in your situation. It brings together everything I've seen work over years of guiding women through this exact journey. Take a moment and look at it. You might be surprised by how much clarity and direction it offers, and how quickly things can start to shift when you finally have the right approach. Your body is not your enemy. Menopause is not a disease, it's a transition, a powerful, profound biological transition. And the belly fat that has appeared is not a punishment for something you did wrong. It is a signal, a biological message. And that message is telling you that the rules have changed, that the strategies that worked before are no longer sufficient, and that you need a new, informed, science-based approach. The science is clear. The hormonal pathways are mapped and understood. The solutions exist, and they don't require starvation. They don't require hours on a treadmill. They don't require giving up the foods you love. What they require is knowledge, specific, targeted, actionable knowledge, the kind of knowledge that most women are never given by their doctors, by the media, by the fitness industry, the kind that changes not just your body, but the way you relate to your body, the way you understand yourself, the way you move through this chapter of your life. If this video resonated with you, if something here finally made sense of what you've been experiencing, I want you to do one thing: subscribe to this channel, because this is just the beginning. There is so much more I want to share with you about hormones, about nutrition, about the science of aging gracefully and powerfully. Every video is designed to give you the kind of deep understanding that transforms, not just informs. You are not broken, you are not failing, you are simply standing at the threshold of a new chapter. And this chapter, I promise you, can be one of the most powerful of your entire life. Once you understand the science, once you align your actions with your biology, once you stop fighting your body and start collaborating with its natural intelligence, everything changes. The belly, the energy, the sleep, the confidence, the sense of being at home in your own skin again. I'll see you in the next video, and until then, be kind to yourself. Your body has carried you through every single day of your life. It has fought for you, healed for you, adapted for you. It deserves your patience, your compassion, your understanding, and your trust, even now, especially now.